Imagine a world where every move you make, every thought you have, and every decision you take is governed by one single factor: fear. Can you imagine what it's like to live in a society where fear permeates every aspect of your life, whether through religion, politics, or daily social norms? But what if I told you that this doesn't only apply to the past? What if I told you that even today, in the 21st century, fear plays a crucial role in shaping your decisions, your behavior, and even your beliefs? In this video, we will take you on a journey through the most powerful emotion that has shaped entire civilizations: fear. We will reveal how ancient rulers used fear of the gods to maintain their power, how Roman emperors orchestrated bloody spectacles to control the masses, and how medieval inquisitors spread fear of hell to keep European societies in line. But that's not all. We will also show you how totalitarian regimes of the 20th century used fear as their main weapon of rule, and how these same techniques are used today in a modern world full of media, social networks, and political manipulation. By the end of this video, not only will you understand the historical roots of fear as a means of control, but you'll also know how to recognize these tactics in your everyday life. Stay with us until the end, because we will uncover key secrets that have been hidden from the public for centuries. This video could change the way you see the world around you and help you break free from the invisible chains of fear that shape your perception. In Egypt, religion was not just a spiritual practice, it was the primary tool of political control. Pharaohs were considered gods on earth, and fear of their divine power was crucial for maintaining order. Imagine a society where every failure in life, whether a poor harvest or a personal misfortune, could be interpreted as divine punishment for not following the pharaoh's laws. This fear was not just religious but also political. The Egyptian pyramids, grand and magnificent, were not just tombs but symbols of power and fear that upheld pharaonic rule. In Greece, mythology was deeply intertwined with morality and social norms. Fear of divine wrath was ingrained in everyday life. How did the Greeks use myths of Hades and the underworld to discipline society and maintain order? These myths were not just stories but tools to ensure obedience and social cohesion. But how did these stories evolve over time? And what does that tell us about the relationship between fear and control in societies facing uncertainty and change? Roman emperors did not only use military force to control, they used fear as a tool of political propaganda. Gladiatorial games were public spectacles of brutality that served a dual purpose: entertaining the masses and demonstrating imperial authority. Through such spectacles, emperors sent a clear message to their subjects that any disobedience or rebellion would not be tolerated. Imagine how these scenes shaped the perception of emperors as omnipotent figures to be worshipped and feared. But fear was not limited to the gladiatorial arenas. Roman law, with its brutal punishments for treason and disobedience, was a means to maintain fear among the population. How did these punishments ensure that people respected authority without question? What can we learn from the way Roman emperors used fear to maintain stability in an empire that was constantly expanding and facing internal threats? But how did the rulers of the Middle Ages adopt and enhance these methods of control? Stay with us to uncover the secrets of the Inquisition and witch hunts. In the dark times of the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church established the Inquisition as a means of combating heresy. But the Inquisition was not just a religious institution, it was a political tool. Fear of hell and eternal damnation was used to maintain control over people who dared to question the authority of the Church. How did inquisitors use torture not only to extract confessions, but also to create an atmosphere of fear that ensured no one would dare to resist? Examples from the Spanish Inquisition will show how ordinary people, often innocent, became victims of the fear spread by the Church. How did this fear shape life in medieval Europe? And how did people survive in a society where every aspect of their life could be interpreted as heresy? The witch hunts, especially in Europe and America during the 16th and 17th centuries, were the peak of mass hysteria fueled by fear, but this fear was not accidental. It was systematically encouraged by authorities and religious leaders to maintain control over the population. How did women, often on the margins of society, become the victims of this hysteria? How were accusations of witchcraft used to eliminate political opponents and maintain social cohesion through fear? Consider how the trials, such as those in Salem, created an atmosphere of mistrust and fear that permanently changed communities. But what can we learn from these events about how fear can be used to manipulate masses and maintain control in a society facing change? If you think the Inquisition was terrifying, wait until you see how modern totalitarian regimes used fear to control entire nations. Nazi Germany is perhaps the most notorious example of how fear can be used as a means of total control. Hitler's propaganda, orchestrated by Joseph Goebbels, used fear of the other, particularly Jews, communists, and Roma, to mobilize the nation. How did the Nazis manage to convince ordinary Germans that these minorities were a threat to their way of life? And how did they use this fear to justify some of the most horrific crimes in history? The Gestapo, the secret police, was a symbol of fear in everyday life. Through surveillance, arrests, and torture, the Gestapo ensured that every citizen lived in constant fear of the authorities. How did people react to this fear? How did this fear shape society? And how did people cope with this daily terror? In Stalin's Soviet Union, fear was not just a means of control, it was the foundation of the state itself. Through constant purges, Stalin eliminated all real and imagined threats to his rule. How did millions of people perish in the gulags, labor camps where conditions were so brutal that mortality rates were high? How did the KGB, the secret police, use fear to control not only dissidents but also ordinary citizens? How did Stalin use propaganda to create a cult of personality, using fear to maintain total control over Soviet society? How did people live under constant fear of the authorities, and how did this affect their daily interactions and trust among themselves? Fear was an effective tool in the 20th century, but how is it used today in the era of the internet and global connectivity? Stay with us to find out. In the post-9/11 world, fear of terrorism became a global phenomenon that deeply altered the political landscape. Through laws like the Patriot Act in the United States, governments were granted extraordinary powers, often justified by fear of terrorism. How has this fear changed the perception of security and freedom among citizens worldwide? Politicians have often used the rhetoric of fear to gain support for controversial policies. How have elections and referendums around the world been shaped by fear rhetoric? What does this tell us about how fear is used in political campaigns and how perceptions of danger are manipulated? In the age of the internet and social networks, fear has become big business. News about disasters, terrorist attacks, and pandemics quickly go viral. But what about the impact this information has on our mental health and perception of the world? How do the media use fear to increase viewership and clicks? Fake news and conspiracy theories further contribute to the spread of fear. How is fear used to manipulate public opinion in the digital age? How can we recognize and protect ourselves from manipulation through fear in a world flooded with information? Climate change, economic crises, and technological advancement have created fear of an uncertain future. How is this fear used to shape political and social decisions? How does fear of the future affect our behavior and decisions? And how are these fears used to manipulate the masses? Fear of losing jobs due to automation, fear of climate disasters threatening our way of life, fear of political instability. All these fears shape our behavior and decisions. How can we navigate a world full of fear? And how can we ensure that these fears are not used by others for their own gain? Throughout history, fear has been a powerful weapon in the hands of rulers, institutions, and regimes. From ancient Egypt, through medieval Europe, to the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century, fear has been the primary tool for maintaining control over the masses. But today, in a world that is increasingly connected yet increasingly vulnerable, we must be aware of how fear is being used against us. But now, having learned how fear has been used throughout history to manipulate the masses, perhaps the next time you see headlines in the news, political speeches, or social media posts, you'll pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this another attempt to control my perception? Perhaps now you'll better understand why it's important not to succumb to fear but to critically think about the information being presented to you. Perhaps you'll recognize patterns from the past in the present, and maybe you'll decide not to let fear shape your life. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with others, and continue to spread awareness about the importance of critical thinking. The world is full of fears, but you have the power to decide how you will respond to them.